wasn't in my God moment. So I think they'll come and go. But you have to let them come and let them go.
Duchess Sophie didn't just leave Camilla off the guest list, she sent a thunderclap through the royal palace, and she didn't whisper her reasons. She let silence speak volumes. When the palace staff began arranging Sophie's 60th birthday celebration, no one expected the ripple it would cause. Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, known for her calm grace and loyal service, wasn't asking for a grand royal event. She wanted something different, something real. A quiet evening at Bagshot Park with only her closest family, lifelong friends, and a few royals who had earned their place at her side. Every name on the guest list had meaning. It wasn't about status, it was about trust. That's why, when someone casually brought up inviting Queen Camilla, everything changed. Sophie didn't hesitate. She rolled her eyes, gave a short, sharp laugh, and made her feelings crystal clear. The answer wasn't just no, it was never. People in the room were stunned. The air shifted. In royal circles, where everything is polished and polite, open defiance is rare. But Sophie didn't flinch. Her decision was firm. Camilla was not welcome. Word spread fast inside the palace. Staff whispered in hallways. Senior aides shared knowing glances. Something serious had been brewing under the surface for years, and now it was boiling. Camilla's exclusion wasn't a scheduling error or a missed RSVP. It was intentional, loud, and powerful. On party night, Bagshot Park glowed with soft lights and quiet elegance. It was a celebration fit for Sophie's quiet dignity. Princess Anne was one of the first to arrive, followed closely by Prince William and Princess Catherine. The room felt warm, but the air carried tension. Everyone was watching the door, wondering, waiting. But Camilla never showed. She hadn't been invited, and people knew it. They talked in low voices, careful not to be overheard. Was it a personal fight, a long-kept grudge, or something worse? As the evening went on, the attention quietly shifted from the celebration to the scandal no one could stop thinking about. Behind every candlelit laugh and quiet toast, there was one shadow stretching across the estate: Camilla's absence. It wasn't just noticeable, it was loud. This wasn't about seating arrangements or family misunderstandings. It was about a message. Sophie had drawn a line, and she wasn't backing down. For a woman known for poise, this wasn't just a statement, it was war, waged in silence. The kind that leaves everyone guessing and no one comfortable. It wasn't royal protocol, it was personal. And the palace hadn't seen anything like it in years. But what could drive Sophie, one of the most composed royals, to take such a bold public stand? They never yelled, they never fought. But every royal watcher could sense that the ice between Sophie and Camilla was real. From the moment Sophie entered the royal scene, she brought something fresh, something the palace desperately needed after years of scandals and public heartbreak. With her gentle smile and calm grace, Sophie became a symbol of calm. She didn't chase the spotlight. She didn't stir controversy. And the public welcomed her with open arms. Even Queen Elizabeth herself seemed drawn to Sophie's steady presence. But for Camilla, the road was not so smooth. She entered under a cloud, one shaped by years of whispers, judgment, and one name that refused to fade: Diana. Camilla's relationship with Charles wasn't just a love story, it was a royal scandal that split the monarchy down the middle. While Charles tried to rebuild his image, Camilla stood in the crosshairs of public opinion. She wasn't just the other woman, she became a symbol of everything people hated about royal betrayal. Even as she worked to earn respect, Diana's shadow followed her. Every wave, every smile, every attempt to show compassion was met with doubt. And then came Sophie, poised, polished, and almost too perfect. She didn't need to overcome a legacy. She was building one from scratch. And that made everything harder for Camilla. Sophie didn't force her way into royal favor. She flowed into it. While Camilla struggled to prove her worth, Sophie quietly earned trust. The press praised her. The Queen leaned on her. Events that once centered around senior royals now often featured Sophie standing at the Queen's side. And the comparisons began. Public discussions shifted. Who wore it better? Who spoke more naturally? Who smiled easily? And who seemed guarded? the answers always seemed to favor Sophie, and every time that happened, the gap between her and Camilla widened. Not through words, not through confrontation, but through silent discomfort. At public events, you didn't need to hear what they said. You just had to watch. When they stood near each other, the space between them felt heavier than it should. Their conversations were brief. Smiles were quick and forced. Cameras captured the stiffness, but insiders whispered what no photo could show: these women were never close. Behind every shared glance was a wall, and neither tried to climb it. Not because of open hostility, but because of quiet resentment. Camilla carried the burden of her past. Sophie carried the crown of approval. And when two women carry that much history, closeness becomes impossible. Yet the real rivalry wasn't just about favor or friendliness. It was about influence. In a palace built on tradition, reputation is power. And Sophie was winning until Camilla changed the rules. For years, Sophie had built a quiet but solid foundation inside the royal family. While others chased titles and fought headlines, she stayed the course. Her loyalty to Queen Elizabeth wasn't performative, it was personal. She was there through the toughest seasons, offering calm when chaos reigned. Many believed she reminded the Queen of a younger, more grounded royal era. And that wasn't by accident. Sophie understood the monarchy's rhythm. She moved with grace, avoided scandals, and represented the crown with a quiet authority that earned her deep respect behind closed doors. When others fell from grace, Sophie stood firm. To many, she was the Queen's quiet anchor. But nothing in the palace stays forever, and everything shifted the moment Camilla officially became Queen Consort. Her marriage to Charles years earlier had already started changing public opinion, slowly pulling her out from Diana's shadow. But it wasn't until the Queen's passing, in 2022, that Camilla's place in the royal structure became undeniable. With the crown on Charles's head, Camilla wasn't just a figure beside him, she was a force. Events began to center around her. Headlines praised her resilience. Public perception tilted. And behind that shift, Sophie's once commanding presence quietly faded. No one said it out loud, but the energy in the room had changed. It wasn't just about visibility. Camilla began altering royal traditions, subtle changes that seemed small to outsiders, but to Sophie, they were personal. The customs Sophie had protected alongside the late Queen were being restructured. From guest lists to ceremonial roles, Camilla's influence reached deeper than anyone expected. What once felt sacred now felt replaced. For Sophie, this wasn't just uncomfortable. It felt like a rewriting of history. The legacy she had helped preserve was being edited, and she wasn't holding the pen. With every shift in protocol, every new face at the table, Sophie saw her place dimming. That's why her decision to ban Camilla from birthday celebrations wasn't random. It wasn't petty. It was calculated. It was a line in the sand. Sophie wasn't trying to start a fight. She was taking her space back. The message was clear. Some parts of the crown's legacy were still hers to protect. Bagshot Park wasn't just a home. That night, it became a fortress. And Camilla? She was outside. The move shocked insiders. But to those who had watched the quiet power shifts, it made perfect sense. Sophie hadn't spoken much, but her silence had teeth. But this wasn't just about royal rankings. Both women had their own loyal empires. They both wore crowns of compassion. But behind the smiles, charity became a battleground. To the public, Sophie and Camilla were united in their royal duties. But deep within palace walls, their charity work told a different story. Sophie had long focused on children, education, and empowering youth. Her approach was deeply personal. She didn't chase cameras or headlines. Instead, she visited schools, sat beside struggling students, and asked real questions. She wanted to understand their world before trying to change it. Her work was quiet, consistent, and heartfelt. And for those who watched closely, it was clear Sophie wasn't just showing up. She was investing. Camilla, too, had carved a powerful space for herself. Her focus leaned toward domestic violence, women's health, and promoting reading. These were important causes, but her way of reaching the public felt different. She hosted grand events, spoke at podiums, and brought global attention to difficult topics. Her team worked hard to position her as a bold voice for the voiceless, and the impact was undeniable. Still, royal watchers couldn't help but notice. Sophie's efforts were personal. Camilla's were polished. And beneath that difference, something more complex was brewing. Their causes began to overlap. Not by chance, but almost like a chess match. When Sophie appeared at a literacy program, Camilla launched a national reading campaign. When Camilla stood with survivors of violence, Sophie scheduled visits to women's shelters. At first, it seemed a coincidence, but patterns formed. Media headlines began comparing their efforts. Who connects better? Who leads with more heart? The public started taking sides, and slowly, their quiet dedication to charity transformed into an unspoken competition for purpose and power. Their styles told the story. Sophie traveled quietly with small teams, making time for one-on-one talks that often went unnoticed by the press. Camilla, in contrast, stepped into large fundraisers, gave powerful speeches, and built relationships with major organizations. One seemed to move with empathy, the other with efficiency. And that contrast didn't just divide public opinion, it deepened the space between the two women themselves. Every appearance became more than duty. It became a message. Every campaign, a move on the board. Behind closed doors, aides whispered of tension. Timing of visits clashed. Invitations were carefully curated. And when their events touched the same topics, comparisons were inevitable. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. This wasn't about charity anymore. It was about presence, about influence, and about legacy. Two women, both committed to helping others, had become locked in a quiet, elegant rivalry that neither could afford to lose. As each woman carved her legacy, the tension followed them home, especially for Sophie. Bagshot Park wasn't just Sophie's home, it was her sanctuary. And this time, Camilla was unwelcome. The 60th birthday celebration wasn't designed to be a royal spectacle. It was intimate by design. Every detail whispered elegance, not extravagance. Sophie wanted more than a party. She wanted peace. She chose candles over chandeliers, strings over speeches, and only the people who had earned her trust. There were no random invites, no seats filled for the sake of appearance. This wasn't a royal obligation. It was a moment of reflection on loyalty, legacy, and love. And the people who stood by her during the quiet years, they were finally front and center. Princess Anne arrived early, her presence as solid as ever. She had always shared a quiet understanding with Sophie, one that didn't need words. Prince William and Princess Catherine soon followed. Their attendance wasn't just protocol, it was a public alignment. The guest list, though small, carried weight. And as the evening unfolded, it became clear that every arrival spoke volumes. But so did every absence, especially one. Camilla's name had been scrubbed from the list completely, and people noticed. Not because she was late, but because she had never been invited. The room buzzed quietly with speculation. Some thought Camilla had other obligations, others weren't so sure. The air began to shift. Whispers passed like secrets through glasses of wine and careful glances. Has Sophie made a mistake? Or was she making a statement? The mood stayed warm, but beneath the laughter was tension, one that couldn't be ignored. And then came the rumor Camilla might show up anyway, an uninvited queen at the gates of a duchess's domain. But when Sophie heard the speculation, she didn't flinch. She simply smiled, calm, controlled, unbothered. Her silence said everything. She didn't believe Camilla would dare. As the evening wore on, all eyes drifted toward the door. Every pause in conversation felt like a countdown. But the queen consort never came. And with each passing hour, her absence grew louder. It didn't just hang in the air, it shifted the meaning of the night. This wasn't just a celebration of Sophie's 60 years. It was a declaration, a reclaiming. And everyone inside Bagshot Park knew it. Some whispered admiration, others questioned the fallout, but none could deny what was happening. But this was no isolated moment. It was a reflection of years of unspoken wounds. Sophie didn't always see Camilla as a threat. But time and silence hardened things. In the early days, there was no rivalry. Sophie entered the royal family quietly, respectfully, and without scandal. She married Prince Edward and slipped into royal life with a grace that made her almost invisible, but in the best way. She didn't demand attention. She earned it. Her charm came not from grand speeches or flashy appearances, but from her steady, kind, and consistent. Slowly, she became a trusted figure in the Queen's inner circle. Her name didn't dominate headlines, but inside the palace, it carried weight. She wasn't a headline. She was a pillar. Camilla's experience couldn't have been more different. From the moment she re-entered Charles's life as more than a friend, she was judged. Diana's legacy loomed over every step she took. Viewers remembered heartbreak, interviews, tears. Camilla wasn't just stepping into a royal role, she was stepping over a wound the world hadn't healed from. Her love story with Charles wasn't seen as romantic. It was seen as a betrayal. No matter how hard she tried, the public didn't forget. And the palace felt it too. Acceptance didn't come quickly. It didn't come easily. And every time Camilla tried to rebuild, Diana's shadow knocked the bricks back down. Sophie, meanwhile, was flourishing. While Camilla was busy defending her past, Sophie was building her future. Her relationship with the Queen grew deeper by the year. She became a quiet confidant, someone the Queen could rely on when the rest of the family made waves. And the contrast became clear. Where Camilla walked cautiously, Sophie moved freely. One was rebuilding, the other was rising. And the more the public compared them, the more apparent the divide became. One woman was trying to erase mistakes. The other had none to erase. But the tension wasn't loud. It was made of moments missed, glances, short exchanges, cold smiles. Camilla would stand slightly apart during joint appearances. Sophie would answer questions without including her. Their interactions weren't rude, but they weren't warm either. Camilla's smiles never quite reached her eyes. Sophie's responses stayed perfectly polite, but never affectionate. It was professionalism without connection, and it spoke volumes. Behind every handshake was a distance neither of them tried to bridge. As Sophie's bond with Queen Elizabeth deepened, Camilla's seemed practiced. Sophie's presence beside the Queen felt organic. Camilla's, though present, always felt like it needed approval. That subtle difference made everything heavier. And over time, the silence between them became a wall too tall to climb. It wasn't built in one moment. It was built brick, by years of watching, comparing, and holding back. Yet Sophie's journey to royal power wasn't without its own dark chapters. Before she earned respect, Sophie walked through fire. Scandals nearly broke her, but she survived. In spring 1999, just weeks before her wedding, Sophie's world cracked open. A tabloid splashed an old topless photo across its front page. A live private moment from over a decade earlier now turned into national shame. But what went deeper than public humiliation was the source. The photo had come from a former friend, a betrayal of loyalty and trust. The press tore into her. Commentators questioned her fitness to join royalty, and Sophie, still adjusting to life under a microscope, was forced to stand tall while the world tried to knock her down. Buckingham Palace called it a gross invasion of privacy, but the damage was done. The timing was cruel, the spotlight relentless, and for Sophie, the pain is undeniable. But the fire didn't stop there. Just 2 years later, she walked straight into another storm. In 2001, while still running her public relations firm, she was lured into a trap. A reporter from the News of the World, pretending to be an Arab sheikh, set up a private meeting. Secret recordings claimed Sophie had spoken frankly about members of the royal family, about politicians, even about Camilla. The headlines screamed betrayal. Accusations flew. And suddenly, Sophie was cast not as a quiet duchess, but as a loose cannon. She was portrayed as careless, even dangerous to the crown. The royal family stood behind her, but the sting lingered. Public trust wavered. Her professional world crumbled. The fallout was swift. Sophie stepped away from her business. She shifted focus entirely to royal duties. Not because she had to, but because she understood what was at stake. She could no longer live in both worlds. The palace demanded full allegiance, so she chose service over success, duty over ambition. And it was no easy choice, but it was the beginning of her redemption. Then came 2011. Another scandal. Sophie and Prince Edward visited Bahrain, a country plagued by human rights concerns. During the visit, she received lavish gifts, fine jewelry, and luxury items from the ruling elite. Critics pounced. How could a royal accept such offerings from a regime accused of violence and oppression? The backlash was immediate. Some demanded she return the gifts. Others said she should donate them. The controversy resurfaced old wounds accusations that Sophie didn't fully grasp the weight of her role. But again, she didn't crumble. She didn't hide. She moved forward, steady, silent, and stronger. Each scandal left a mark, but instead of scars that weakened her, they became proof of her endurance. Where others would have retreated, Sophie stepped up. She embraced a life of quiet service, building trust one careful step at a time. And slowly, the whispers faded. In their place came respect, not for being flawless, but for being real, for failing, learning, and rising. Again and again, these trials shaped Sophie. And now, they define how far she'll go to protect her place. Now the world is watching. Will Charles step in, or will the royal rift grow deeper? What started as one missing name on a birthday guest list has now become the symbol of something far greater, a fracture within the monarchy that no longer hides behind palace walls. Whispers of King Charles's reaction have already begun to swirl through royal circles. Some say he was blindsided. Others insist he's quietly furious. The idea that another senior royal could leave out Queen Camilla intentionally is more than a personal slight. It's a challenge to the image of unity the crown desperately clings to. And now, Charles faces a choice that could redefine the royal family's future. Will he defend Camilla, risking further division? Or will he step back, understanding that forcing reconciliation might only push Sophie further away? Behind closed doors, advisors are split. Some urge the king to publicly smooth over the rift. Others warn that doing so might paint Sophie as the villain, and that could backfire. Because Sophie, after years of quiet service and public respect, is not someone easily dismissed. She's earned her place. And this time, she's standing her ground. But how far is she willing to go? The pressure is mounting. Upcoming royal events, weddings, anniversaries, official tours suddenly feel more fragile. Every invitation, every seating arrangement, every joint appearance could spark a new headline. Will Sophie and Camilla reunite? Can they stand on the same balcony without boiling? And if not, who does the public side with? That's the question no one dares ask out loud, but everyone is thinking. Because the monarchy is no longer just tradition. It's about perception. And the royals know that fractured faces make for dangerous optics. What makes this battle so unique is that both women hold immense influence, but in very different ways. Camilla commands status. She wears the title. She walks beside the king. But Sophie carries something equally powerful. Quiet. Credibility. The public trusts her. She doesn't court attention, but when she speaks or doesn't, people listen. Her silence at that birthday party said more than any speech ever could. And now, with millions watching, her next move matters more than ever. Could they reconcile? Maybe. But even that comes with questions. Would it be real? Or just another performance for cameras? And even if they find common ground, would the damage already be done? Royal history is filled with icy smiles and staged handshakes. But this feels deeper. This feels like a moment that could echo for generations. Because behind the tiaras and traditions are human hearts full of pride, pain, and power. And sometimes, even the strongest crowns can't hold back the storm. Because if this rift remains unresolved, the crown might carry cracks no one can repair. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.